Why does modern dating feel so exhausting? Like you're constantly giving, explaining, adjusting, and still ending up lonely? Why do you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners, getting ghosted, or feeling too much the moment you ask for real connection? We can't blame this entirely on dating apps, although they have certainly made things harder. And also, it's not because you are needy, dramatic, or asking for too much. For many people, especially those who grew up with narcissistic or emotionally unavailable caregivers, dating isn't happening in the present moment. It is happening through a nervous system that learned early on that love must be earned, emotions must be managed, and closeness is never safe for long. So, every swipe, every date, every attachment is filtered through childhood patterns your body still thinks are real. And until those patterns are healed, dating will keep feeling confusing, draining, and painfully familiar. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to another episode with me, your host, Ani. Today, we're addressing an issue so many people struggle with, but few truly understand. So, I suggest we move past the symptoms and look at what's really happening beneath it all. Let's start where most of this actually begins: early emotional conditioning. When you grow up with narcissistic, emotionally unavailable, or inconsistent caregivers, your nervous system learns very specific rules about love and safety long before you're old enough to question them. For many women, this shapes their feminine energy in three powerful ways. First, overgiving and people pleasing. Love becomes conditional. You learn that affection arrives when you are agreeable, when you're helpful, quiet, or useful. So later in relationships, you give more than you receive. You explain, adjust, wait, forgive, and overextend, hoping that if you do that, you'll finally be chosen. The second one is hypervigilance. You become an expert at reading the room. You track tone changing, facial expression, pausing in text. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for danger because emotional safety dependent on someone else's mood. And the third one is suppressed emotions. You were told you were too sensitive, you're too dramatic, or too much. So you learn to swallow your needs, apologize for your feelings, and feel guilty for wanting closeness, reassurance, or consistency. Let me give you an example. A mother who criticized every decision teaches you to second guess your needs in relationship and seek approval before trusting yourself. A father who withdrew affection when emotions surface trains your body to associate vulnerability with abandonment. So you stay guarded even when you want intimacy. A family that valued image over truth teaches you to perform in dating, being attractive, accommodating, impressive, instead of being authentic. And here's the most important thing to understand: these are not personality traits. These are survival strategies. Your system adapted to an environment where love felt unstable or conditional. It learned how to stay connected the only way it knew how. And the moment you recognize that, recognize that, things start to change. Because when you see these patterns as learned responses instead of flaws, self-blame softens. And where self-blame dissolves, repair becomes possible. And that is the beginning of healing. It is not about fixing who you are, but gently teaching your nervous system that love no longer has to be earned. Now, this is where early trauma collides with modern dating culture, and the result is confusion, exhaustion, and deep loneliness. When you grow up with narcissistic or emotionally unavailable caregivers, your nervous system learns that connection is unstable. So, in dating, you don't meet people from presence. As I said, you meet them from your old survival patterns. You give more than it is asked. You explain your feelings very carefully. You tolerate mixed signals, and without realizing it, this attracts partners who are emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or narcissistic because your nervous system feels familiar next to theirs. And what about ghosting and emotional withdrawals? These experiences don't just sting, they reopen old wounds. Being ignored, left unread, mirrors the childhood experience of emotional abandonment. Your body doesn't experience ghosting as just a bad dating behavior, it experiences it as danger. You show up present, open, and giving, yet after a few cold silences, you feel empty, drained, unseen, and anxious. And that's your nervous system working overtime, trying to secure connection instead of enjoying it. It is replaying the same loops it learned in childhood. If I don't try harder, I'll be rejected or I'll be abandoned. And here's the critical insight. If your nervous system was regulated and healthy, these hot and cold games or emotional withdrawals would feel like red flags, not triggers. They would turn you off literally, immediately. Instead of activating your old survival strategies, your body would recognize inconsistency as unsafe and disengage naturally rather than collapsing into anxiety or overcompensation. For example, you go on a few dates with someone exciting. They disappear for a couple of days and they text casually. Your system might spiral. Did I do something wrong? Maybe I need to text more, plan more, give more. But this is exactly the kind of inconsistency that should repel a healthy, grounded, feminine energy. And the takeaway here is that ghosting and withdrawal don't create trauma. They activate pre-existing trauma imprints. Healing isn't about avoiding dating or expecting perfect behavior from others. It is about training your nervous system to hold your energy, maintain your boundaries, and recognize what feels safe. Once your system is grounded, the game loses its power, and your feminine energy can operate from a clarity, magnetism, and self respect, not survival mode. So let's talk about real life loops that many women, I am sure, recognize immediately. You enter into a relationship, hopeful, excited, but the moment tension appears, you over apologize, you soften your need, you shrink yourself, the partner pulls away, and this loops repeats. You wait anxiously for replies, tone check messages, chase for reassurance, mirroring how you once sought emotional safety from a parent who was inconsistent or self-absorbed. You feel like you are always doing the emotional work while the other person stays distant, passive, or detached. This is uncomfortable, but is one of the most honest truths that I want to share with you. Many women today are operating from their wounded feminine. It shows up as overfunctioning emotionally, as I mentioned before, carrying everyone's feelings as if they were your own, leading the relationship, making all the plans, managing the dynamics, steering the emotional tone, explaining, managing, fixing, initiating, constantly trying to keep things together, holding the emotional container for two people, taking responsibility for your partner's moods, their insecurities, or engagement. At first glance, some of this may even feel like empowerment, but this is not authentic feminine energy. This is survival mechanism your nervous system learned in response to early trauma. Especially inconsistent or narcissistic caregivers, your system says, if I manage this, I'm safe. If I don't, I risk abandonment, conflict, or rejection. So if you're the one who always texts first, organizes dates, or tries to soothe conflicts while your partner remains emotionally unavailable, you suppress your own needs to keep the relationship stable, only to feel exhausted, resentful, and unseen. Every time someone ghosts or withdraws, your nervous system collapses into anxiety, triggering the same old loop from childhood. And this is what I want to share with you again. Even well-meaning dating advisors such as be confident, don't overtext, set your boundaries, wait for them to initiate contacts won't work if the underlying nervous system patterns aren't addressed. You can follow all the tips perfectly, but if your system is still replaying early trauma, the loops will continue and your energy will burn out. And a very important point, healing the wounded feminine is not about tactics or strategies. It is about regulating your nervous system, reclaiming your emotional container, and learning to hold your sensitivity as strength rather than a trap. Only then can dating and relationships stop feeling exhausting and your authentic feminine energy receptive, grounded, and magnetic, and fully emerging. At the same time, many men are operating from their wounded masculine, and this will be our next week's topic. I'll cover it in the next week's episode. There are typically avoidance and emotional depth, fear of commitment, detachment masked as independence, difficulty holding presence, consistency, or responsibility. So what happened? Women became more masculine in the relationships. They're doing the chasing, controlling, holding structure. Men become more feminine. They're withdrawing, feeling overwhelmed, waiting to be led emotionally, not because anyone is wrong, but because trauma flipped the polarity. And narcissistic parenting patterns aren't just psychological, they are encoded in the nervous system. Your body learned how to survive love early on. So unless that imprint is consciously healed, it will replay date after date, relationship after relationship, no matter how self-aware you are. That is why dating advice doesn't stick. I don't know how many times I've repeated this. Just choose better does not work. Chemistry keeps pulling you into the same dynamics because this isn't about choice alone. It is about what your nervous system recognizes as safe. My lovely listeners, what I'll be sharing with you is what worked for me personally through therapy, somatic practices, shadow work, and self-reflection. Everyone's nervous system and trauma history is unique, so take what resonates with you and adapt it for yourself. And also, please keep in mind that this is not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you're struggling with severe trauma, anxiety, or depression, please reach out to a licensed therapist or trauma-informed practitioner. I'll leave the references I've used for my research in the description for everyone who wants to dive deeper. So let's talk about somatic awareness. Start with your body before your story. Research in somatic psychology and neuroscience shows that trauma and stress are stored in the body, not just in the mind. Gently scan for areas, the tension areas, your chest, stomach, throat, your jaw, that may activate when you're dating or connecting. Rather than judging this sensation, bring awareness to them and use slow, deep breathing into your chest and belly. This allows your nervous system to register safety and gives your body a chance to release stored tension before the mind tries to interpret or rationalize it. Shadow work. Shadow work is not about fixing yourself or labeling yourself as broken. Neuroscience and trauma research shows that many automatic reactions like overgiving, overadapting, staying quiet, or constantly seeking reassurance are adaptive survival strategies your nervous system developed in response to early stress two inconsistent caregivers. The goal of shadow work is integration, not self-punishment. It is about noticing when these patterns arise in the present, understanding their origin, and choosing consciously not to let them dictate your response. Over time, these practices retain your nervous system, creating space for emotional regulation, authentic expression, and healthier relationships. Boundaries without guilt. Boundaries are not rejection, they are regulation. Practice saying no without explaining, apologizing, or over justifying. Each time you protect your emotional space, your nervous system learns a new rule. I don't have to abandon myself to stay connected. And I want you to ask yourself, am I responding to what's happening now, or am I replaying an old parental dynamic? Pausing instead of reacting interrupts the loop and gives you real choice. And this is about building awareness and practicing a new response again and again until your nervous system learns that connection no longer requires self-abandonment. Please keep in mind that healing does not happen overnight. There's no magic here, no manifestation. Stable, lasting change comes from doing the work, step by step, with patience and consistency. So, my lovely listeners, I want to thank you for being here and for lending me your ears. Your presence and attention are the first step towards noticing your patterns, reclaiming your energy, and allowing your feminine power to shine fully. Please keep practicing gently, stay compassionate with yourself, and remember every small step towards awareness is a step towards true freedom in your love life. So until next time, stay fierce, stay bold, and always go beyond the mind.